President James K. Polk was both pleased and exhausted. He had just completed one of the most ambitious and accomplished single terms of office of any president of the United States. He was also the youngest man to hold the office up to the time. Just 53 years old, he looked forward to a long retirement where he and his wife Sarah could spend their days in peaceful solitude, surrounded by family and friends in their impressive home called Polk Place in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. As Polk stated it himself, "I am sure I shall be a happier man in my retirement than I have been during the 4 years I have filled the highest office in the gift of my countrymen." On his final official day as president, Polk stayed up nearly the whole night waiting for Congress to send him bills to be signed into law. The most important of these created the Department of the Interior, the 7th cabinet-level position. 2 days later, the Polks attended the inauguration of incoming President Zachary Taylor, who impressed Polk as little more than a well-meaning old man, uneducated, exceedingly ignorant of public affairs, and of very ordinary capacity. By this time, the Polks had moved out of the White House and were packed for their long journey to Tennessee. The trip would take them by steamboat, train, and carriage through Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, and up the Mississippi River to Kentucky, and finally down the Cumberland River to Nashville, Tennessee. Along the way, the Polks were met by enthusiastic crowds of admirers and government officials, were escorted by military parades, and honored with gatherings and elaborate dinners. To Polk, the trip was like a triumphal march, but the constant attention and strain to meet and shake the hands of thousands were taking a toll on what was left of his depleted physical constitution. During the trip, Polk complained of a chronic stomach ailment and expressed concern about the rumors of cholera spreading throughout many southern states. While traveling by steamboat near Mobile, Alabama, a deck passenger aboard his own boat died suddenly of what was believed to be cholera and was immediately buried on the bank of the river. Although desirous to make a hasty passage through New Orleans, where a physician warned Polk of the proliferation of the deadly disease, Polk saw no honorable way to escape the entreaties of citizens to spend time in the city. He was treated to a sumptuous breakfast prepared in the French style of cooking, of which Polk wrote, "To one unaccustomed to it, it was difficult to tell of what each dish was composed. Fish of every variety and prepared in various ways constituted a large part of the repast. The table was covered, too, with every variety of light wines. I could see nothing before me that I had been accustomed, or that I should have deemed it safe to eat in my state of health and in a cholera atmosphere. I took a cup of coffee and something on my plate to save appearances, but was careful to eat none of it. As soon as an opportunity offered, I asked the servant in a low tone if he could give me a piece of cornbread and broiled ham." After spending a day and a half in New Orleans, the Polks boarded the steamboat Caroline E. Watkins and began the final leg of their journey. By the time the boat reached Memphis, 3 more passengers had died of cholera, and a number of others were taken ill. Polk himself suffered from a derangement of stomach and bowels, but continued to take visitors aboard his boat, and even disembarked for a short time in Memphis. By the time he reached Paducah, Kentucky, Polk was becoming alarmed by his own health, and summoned a local doctor to administer to him. Dr. Jones determined that Polk was not suffering from cholera, but warned that similar ailments could become cholera when the disease is present. Polk spent 3 days in bed recovering before continuing on to Nashville, where he arrived on April 2, 1849, after a journey of 27 physically agonizing days. Upon arriving in Nashville, the Polks found that their home, Polk Place, was not yet habitable. So leaving the arrangements in the hands of a steward, James and Sarah Polk left Nashville by carriage to visit his mother in Columbia, 40 miles south, where they were greeted by a crowd numbering in the hundreds. They then proceeded to his mother, Jane Knox Polk's house, where after 4 long years he embraced her. It was at this point that Polk considered his journey complete. He wrote, "My journey on my return from the seat of government is now over, and I am again at my home in the midst of the friends of my youth and of my riper years. My political career has been run and is now closed. Henceforth I shall be a private citizen. I cannot now undertake to review the past and to compare my present contented and happy condition with it. I have been much honored by my countrymen and am deeply grateful to them. I may say that I regard the distinguished marks of respect everywhere shown me by the people, without distinction of political party on my journey homeward, as the most gratifying and highest honor ever paid me by any portion of my fellow citizens. James and Sarah Polk spent 14 days in Columbia, then 5 days in Murfreesboro visiting Sarah's relatives. Upon arriving back in Nashville, the Polks spent their days setting up their new home. Polk purchased book presses for his sizable library and a pair of fine carriage horses. He walked the street as an average citizen and even appeared before a judge in a court case over the disputed boundary lines of Polk Place. The citizen life that he craved was overshadowed, however, by the specter of cholera now raging in Nashville. Cholera generally took its heaviest toll on the poor near the river, but in 1849 it crossed the boundary of affluence and geography and was making its presence felt among the rich and poor alike. Several of Polk's friends were diagnosed with the disease, for which Polk showed concern. He wrote, "Mr. V.K. Stevenson and General Harding, who were taken ill of cholera on yesterday, are both better this morning. I was occupied during most of the day among my papers and books at my own house. During the prevalence of cholera, I deem it prudent to remain as much as possible at my own house." 2 days later, however, on Sunday, June 3, 1849, Polk himself was taken ill. Doctors were immediately sent for. Since the symptoms from which he suffered in a chronic form were similar to those of cholera, historians have been reluctant to say with complete certainty that Polk actually contracted the disease. He suffered for 12 days, gradually losing strength. In that time, he expressed a willingness to be baptized. Although Polk attended the Presbyterian church with his mother and his wife throughout his life, he chose a Methodist minister to perform the service. On June 15th, at 4:38 p.m., just 3 months after leaving the White House, James K. Polk died. The next day, following a funeral marked by Masonic ritual, he was buried in City Cemetery on the outskirts of Nashville. A year later, the body was exhumed and placed under a tomb in the side yard of Polk Place. After Sarah's death, 42 years later, their bodies were moved to the grounds of the state capitol in Nashville. James K. Polk is the president to have had the shortest retirement of all. He is the youngest president to die, outside of those who have been assassinated.